Namaskar and welcome to today's deliberation on subjective circular reasoning. Subjective circular reasoning is one of the don'ts of modern humanities research. I've already stated in one of my earlier videos that there are quite a few don'ts in research. For instance, methodical ad hocism, deceptive communication, subjective circular reasoning, so on and so forth. Now, what is circular reasoning? Circular reasoning is not really a formal logical fallacy, but still valid, but very much close to logical fallacy when you begin with what you end with. So the same phenomenon is sometimes regarded as cause and at times as effect. When A produces B and in turn B produces A without having any sort of a genuine connection between them, it is called circular reasoning. Circular reasoning is generally of two types. It can be classified into two broad types: objective circular reasoning and subjective circular reasoning. But when we talk about circular reasoning, we actually refer to objective circular reasoning. That is why it is valid. But subjective circular reasoning is never valid in research. But objective circular reasoning is indeed, it's valid because we don't have any weapon to counter its invalidity. Normally, there are two types, as I've already mentioned, two types: objective circular reasoning and subjective circular reasoning. The components of circular reasoning is generally valid because if the premises are true, then the conclusions must also be true. There's no doubt about that. So when we talk about validity of circular reasoning, we generally talk about objective circular reasoning. But in that case, the validity of objective circular reasoning is primarily because of its objectivity, not because of its subjectivity. And much in the same way, when we talk about the invalidity of subjective circular reasoning, its invalidity is primarily because of its subjectivity, not primarily because of its circularity. So I will give you two examples each of objective circular reasoning and subjective circular reasoning. Our main topic is subjective circular reasoning, which is not acceptable in modern qualitative humanities research. First of all, I'll take a few instances of objective circular reasoning. What do you mean by objective circular reasoning? It is basically objective in nature, but the reasoning mode or the mode of argumentation is circular. That is, revolving around a circle, as if it revolves around a circle. I'll give you one example each from one from Sanskrit literature and one from another subject. For example, maybe political science. First of all, I'll take one example from Sanskrit grammar. Phalam opiho hetu adhyayanena vasati. It is a famous vritti which is generally found in Sanskrit grammatical texts. What does it mean? Staying is staying for study. Someone is staying for study. So in this case, the effect is also regarded as a cause. So when the cause is an effect and the effect is also a cause, it is called phalam opiho hetu adhyayanena vasati, staying for study. What produces what? Does staying produces study, or the study produces staying? Study here is generally regarded as the effect of staying. But if we look at it from the other angle, it can also be called a cause, because without study, staying is not really feasible at all. So phalam opiho hetu adhyayanena vasati, it means that it is someone is staying for study, which is clearly a circular reasoning, right? But it is objective circular reasoning. That is why it is absolutely valid. I'll take another example from political science. In America, it is generally said that the third party is not acceptable because the people don't like it. In the USA, people don't like the third political party because the third party doesn't get enough support. So study the reasoning in the two components of it. First of all, the USA, the people don't like third party. This is one segment. And another segment is the third party doesn't get support. So what produces what? Cause A produces effect B, or cause B produces effect A. In that sense, if you ask that why don't the people like third party, the answer will be as clear as anything. The third party doesn't get any support from the people. But if you ask in the opposite direction as to why it doesn't get enough support from the people, the answer is just the same, because people don't like it. So we are actually going nowhere from here. We are staying where we are staying. So it is called circular, because A and B are actually moving around a circle. That is why it is circular reasoning. But we have to keep it in mind that in this case also, it is such kind of a circular reasoning which is basically objective in nature. So it is based on observation, so basically or essentially valid. So these are the two examples I am giving for objective circular reasoning. Now I am coming to the topic of subjective circular reasoning, which is our main topic of discussion. Once again, I'll give one example from another subject and one example from my Sanskrit literature. The Bible is true because it contains the words of God. If we say this, we'll find there are two segments. Bible is true, the Bible is true, and the words of God that are written in the Bible is contained in the Bible. That is why the Bible is true. So if you ask why the Bible is true, the answer will be because it contains the words of God. And the next question, if you ask why do you think that the Bible contains the words of God, then it may be answered in this fashion, that it is simply because Bible is true. Had it been written by human beings, it could not have been as true as what Bible is now. So it must have been written by God. And it is not only true for Bible, it is basically true of all the holy books of the world, say for example Quran or Bhagavad Gita. So it is a kind of circular reasoning, but in this case it is not objective, it is clearly subjective, because the speaker who says that the Bible is true only because it contains the words of God actually is trying to mean that under any circumstances he will believe by the Bible because it contains the God, or since it contains the God, the Bible is true for him. So it is subjective. That is why it must be rejected. It cannot be accepted in modern research. Another example I will give from Sayano's Rigbhashya Prakramanika from Sanskrit literature. There is one famous statement given by Sayano, unfortunately, that because of Upanayana, that is the investiture with the sacred thread, only the Traivarnika Purushas, that is the men belonging to three upper classes, are entitled to study the Vedas. What does it imply? It implies that the woman as well as the men belonging to the fourth caste are not allowed to study the Vedas. But if you ask Sayana as to why he has set up such situation for the woman and the men belonging to the fourth category, the answer is clearly subjective. Because why the non-Traivarnika Purushas are not allowed to study the Vedas? Because they didn't have opinion, but they don't have Upanayana, Upanayana, that is investiture with the sacred thread. And that is why, because they don't have the investiture or the Upanayana with the sacred thread, they are not allowed to study the Vedas. And if this be true, then it can also be asked, then why don't they have Upanayana? Why shouldn't they be invested with the holy thread. For example, the ladies. Why they are not infested with the holy thread? The answer is because they don't belong to the Traiborniko Purusho class. So the reasoning is clearly subjective and circular. So it must be rejected. It cannot be accepted. Now, how do you counter it? How do you understand that this is a case of subjective circular reasoning which cannot be accepted in research? There is a Socratic way. Socrates has given one way back, long time back, in fact. So how do you counter it? The Socrates says that interrogate the person who actually speaks this. Ask this person time and time again, and boil the circularity down to a single belief claim. And after scrutinizing the ramifications of the belief claim, you can actually expose the situation quite well, and he'll be fully exposed without questioning the validity of the statement or the belief claim. You can scrutinize the ramifications of the belief claim. So this is one way of countering the subjective circular reasoning. So that is what I have for you now. This is circular reasoning which must be rejected in modern qualitative humanities research. I hope it is sufficient, at least for this case. Thank you very much for watching.